Today's topic is going to be looking at goal setting. We've got another one scheduled in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of June, which will be looking at taking action. After that kind of 4-week or 4-block clusters out the way, we're just going to have a little bit of a review and start looking at how we might move these sessions going forward. The plan today, we've got our regular practitioners, Graeme Foreman, Luke Southgate, Tom O'Neill and Dan Wood with us again. They're all going to do a short section each, on the back of which we really want to try and get the kind of Q&A side of this up and running. So if you think of anything when the practitioners are speaking, please write it down or put it in the group chat, or by all means, when the time comes for Q&A, you can come on the screen and ask the questions directly. It'd be good to hear other people's voices as well. So we're going to do that at the end of each section, so there'll be 3 sections in total. We're going to kick off today, as we did a couple of weeks back, with a video from a current student. Many may recognise the face. This is Tess Howard, who's a current first team hockey player and also GB international. So I will leave it to Tess to get today up and running.
Hi, I'm Tess Howard. I'm in 3rd year studying Geography BA, and I'm at Castle College, part of Durham University Hockey Club, and the highest level sport I played, I play for the Great Britain Women's Senior Hockey Team, hoping to play at the Olympics next year. I think my favourite moment from my time at university has got to be either when we beat Loughborough 7-1 at home in my freshman year, or when we dressed up as a whole team of campus cards and went on a bar crawl around the whole of the university, dressed as campus cards. I'm just going to leave that to your imagination. It was a lot of fun. Question 3: have I learnt any new skills in lockdown? I've been learning yoga and mindfulness. I've been learning some new random hockey skills in the garden with my little brother, which has been good fun. And I've been learning how to use Photoshop and like a movie making software on the computer, which has been pretty cool. My favourite Netflix binge: 2, Suits, and on Amazon Prime though, Madame Secretary. Well worth the watch. My favourite book of all time has got to be The Hunger Games. All 3. Definitely. Or number 2, but all 3. 3 words to describe myself: adventurous, optimistic, and random. So this time's afforded the opportunity to think about my goals for the next 400 days, hopefully, until Tokyo. And obviously the goal itself will be to get there, but along the way I need to set short-term goals, because, for example, at this time we don't really know what's going on from a team point of view, from an international match point of view. So the onus is really being put back on the self to think about technical development. What things do I really want to see on the pitch from myself and for my teammates to see from me? Things like physical fitness, injury prevention, things that I can control. But then also, like, not necessarily performance goals, but process. Like, for example, I've been trying to start a morning routine of yoga, which has really been able to put myself in the right state to start the day. And like, just having little goals like that to see if they work, is quite nice. I think the final thing is other goals, like random things. Like, I want to learn how to use Photoshop properly. So little things like that take you out of your comfort zone, that inspire you to continue out on the pitch. So yeah, goal setting is really important in this time, but being kind to yourself just as much.
Graeme, I'm going to hand over to you to kickstart us if you can, thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Really good listening to Tess, and I also did a video interview with Tess a couple of weeks ago as well, and great to hear her talking about the things that we discussed regarding goal setting. We are in an unprecedented time right now, and I think that the concepts and the theories around goal setting may have changed a little bit. So I think throughout today's session, we're going to have a look at goal setting in a slightly different angle. Hopefully you guys can take it on board and go with it a little bit, but hopefully you can challenge yourselves a little bit more as well. So that's the thought process we're going to take throughout today's session. Ellie, next slide, please. So over the last couple of sessions, when we've been talking about some things that we need to work on in order to still be a performance athlete with a performance mindset, I've always talked about doing 3 things. And I think if we take those 3 things, they're just as important as they are now as they were sort of in the last 2 sessions. And Tess highlighted those things as well. So doing something physical, you have to do something physical in order to stimulate the body. So Tess was talking about doing yoga there. It might be walking the dog. It might be doing something as simple as cutting the grass, but we need to be doing something physical to keep us working. I know Luke's going to be talking a lot about doing the physical aspect a little bit later on as well, but I want to talk about your mindset around that physical. Doing something mentally stimulating or challenging. So, doing something which is going to be academic, doing something in terms of reading a book, maybe doing something in terms of Netflix. Maybe Netflix is mentally stimulating for you at this moment in time, and taking care of yourself in order to sit and watch some Netflix documentaries is not a bad thing. So don't be worried about the fact that actually your mental stimulation one day might just be a bit of binge TV. That's absolutely okay. And then trying to do something new. And I'm a big advocate of this, and I have been since the first day we went into lockdown. And I think I'm day 74, day 75 into shielding now. So I haven't even been out of the house. And it's got to be about learning something new, because when we go back into whatever we want to call it, whether it's a new normal or whether it's just a normal, the world is going to pick up pace again. And actually, if we've just been sitting and not doing anything and not preparing ourselves by not adding something new to our repertoire, maybe we're just going to be a little bit behind the field again. And if we take a sporting analogy about being on the starting blocks, when that gun goes, we need to be prepared to go as well. We need to be ready. We need to be literally on our A game as soon as that whistle or that gun goes, so we can just hit the blocks and we can run pretty quickly straight away. So adding something new to your repertoire is key. And we'll talk a little bit about those 3 again as we go through this presentation. And I'm really pleased that Tess is trying to do that right now. And she's potentially could be at a state where she's quite anxious, she's quite nervous, she's quite frustrated because she should have been at the Olympics right now. But as she discussed, she's got 400 days to be a better athlete. So actually we should hopefully see a better Tess Howard in the 2020 Olympics, which will be in 2021. I'm still trying to get my head around that one as well, by the way. The 2020 Olympics, which are in 2021. I think that's just because the merchandise has already been printed. But the setting goals concept is, you guys have seen SMART goals before, and if anybody hasn't seen SMART or SMARTer goals before, then maybe you haven't been listening to the coaching team or the support staff a lot over the years that you've been in Durham. But SMARTer goals for me at this moment in time, we just need to just put to one side, and we just need to make things a little bit simpler. So my SMART goals are going to be in a different format throughout today, and I know Luke will certainly talk about some elements of SMART goals in the S&C presentation and also in the nutrition presentation as well. Ellie, next slide, please. Hopefully, well, Ellie gets the next slide. Brilliant. Thanks, Ellie, for that. One of the things I just want you guys to look at, and I know this is a wordy slide, so what I don't want you to do is read it, but it's just there for you in case you want to take a screenshot or in case you want to read it at some other time. And I've also added a YouTube link for you guys. This is about a cyclist, and it's about a cyclist who is struggling with maybe building momentum and building motivation, and he's feeling a little bit down in terms of getting out on the road, having that freedom to develop his skills right now as a cyclist. So when you have a look at that, he will talk about all of the hard things. There's a lot of hard things right now. I can't get to my best gym. I can't play with my teammates. I can't literally just go out the streets and do my running. So there's things which we can't do. But actually, I want, in terms of this goal setting presentation, to focus on the things that you can do. So when you start having a look at this presentation and you start to click on the YouTube link, the one thing that you will see is that there's stuff which is hard, but we just have to get through it. And that's a mindset thing. So if we reframe our goal setting concept from a smarter based goal to something which is a little bit more simple, about starting the day with our 3 main goals of doing something physical, doing something mental, and doing something new, it allows our brains just to be a little bit more satisfied with what we can achieve, but it also allows us at the end of the day not to feel too much frustration on what we can't do right now. So in your own time, just have a little read of that, and then also press the YouTube link and have a little link on that as well, and see what you think about that. Next slide, Ellie, please. So the concept about these 2 slides of trying to build some momentum that allows you to be more motivated. Now, if you just get up, go through the day, you don't necessarily hit any goals, you don't necessarily hit any of your targets, and then you go to bed, well, it's pretty normal to wake up the next day and feel exactly the same. Now, what we don't want to do is you don't want to turn one bad day into 2 bad days into a bad week. What we want to try to do is to make sure that we're understanding the situation that we're in. We know that at some stage, if I have a bad day, that's okay. I'm going to recheck myself the next day in order to set my goals, in order to achieve them as well. So let's just stick to something really simple, is choosing those 3 things every day, picking a trigger to attach to it. So we talked about triggers and we talked about habits in the last session, and they're a big thing in terms of your learning. So you need to make sure you have the right trigger. You need to make sure that you have the right habit, and you need to work on that on a day-to-day basis. And let me give you 2 examples of 2 clients that I've just worked with this week. So one client sent me an email, a long email, which basically said, can I recommend some books? I'm really struggling getting up on a morning, really struggling getting changed, and I just have no motivation for the day. So absolutely, I can send you some books for you guys to read, but knowledge is not enough. Knowing is not enough. We need to do some action. So that 3rd point on there is just about doing it. And there's another client who rang me up, and we had a long chat, and we've been in this process for a good 12 months now. And originally they came to me and said, Graeme, I've read 125 self-help books, but I haven't got anywhere. Can you help? So I said, what have you done? And they said they've read 125 self-help books. So reading a book is not going to help. Reading a book is going to give you some knowledge. The action, the just doing it, is going to help. So you need to set those 3 targets at the beginning of every day. You need to actually make sure that there's some challenge there, and then you just need to do it. And then once you've done it, you then need to reflect on it at the end of the day, because your reflection at the end of the day is the thing that's going to help build the momentum. So I start off the next day when I wake up thinking, wow, that was a good day yesterday. I had 3 things to do and I nailed all 3. That's pretty cool. So my new day is starting off on a real big positive, which builds my momentum. It's the whole snowball effect. It's going to start pretty small, but as it starts rolling down the mountain, the momentum, the snowball is going to get bigger. The momentum is going to increase. The snowball is going to get bigger. Your motivation levels will get higher, and you'll be able to do things that you didn't think you could do day one. And again, if we take Tess as an example about learning how to do things on her IT system and making movies and doing Photoshop, well, actually day 1, I'm sure she was pretty rubbish at that. You know, when you get to about day 74, then you're probably a little bit better. So it's just about these small steps, but continuous small steps day in, day out. Next slide, Ellie, please. So I just wanted to share with you something in terms of an adaptation. So if we think about our normal working days, we don't have that anymore. It's a completely different working day to what we possibly had before. So I wanted to share you my adaptation, because I'm working from home. As I said, we're in shielding, and I have a 6-year-old child who I just had to check to make sure she wasn't running in there, by the way. And this is how I start my day. So my morning is I get up a little bit early before everybody else in the household, try to do a little bit of exercise, try to do a little bit of podcast, and then I do some prep for the day. So what's my day about? What are my 3 goals for the day? Well, the good news is I've already ticked one off, because actually my physical has already been done. So before I even start to have breakfast, I've ticked one little box off. I've started the day off on a big high, a big momentum swing for me to make sure that I have a good day. Then I actually go and do a little bit of work. So I'll do some business work, and then that might take me to about 10:30, 11, whatever schedule for the day. And then I need to take a little time out. And don't feel like you can't take these timeouts. These timeouts are really important. What I don't want to do is I don't want to carry my emotion from one event to the next event. So if I give you an example on that, I've just taken a call. Let's say it's from Luke. Luke's having a really bad day. And then all of a sudden, his emotions are just dragged onto my emotions. And then all of a sudden, I have to go and speak to Hannah. And Hannah's really excited. She's having a great day. Well, I don't want to carry my emotions from Luke into the meeting with Hannah. So what I need to do, and what you should guys get into the practice of doing, is setting these little recharge timeouts so that you're not carrying your emotion from one activity to the next. And then some simple questions is, what energy do I want to bring to that meeting with Hannah? Okay, well, I need to up my level a little bit because I'm on a little bit of a lower level after my conversation with Luke. So these recharge timeouts allow you to continually bring the right level of energy you need for that next activity instead of relying on the activity that you've just had. So then I start my second activity. My second activity is always some new learning, which is just before lunch. So therefore, actually, by the time I get to lunch, I've nailed my 3 activities for the day. I've done my physical, I've done my mental, and then I've done my new learning. And I'm going to have a little reflection. And again, it doesn't need to take a lot. It doesn't have to be a 1,500 word reflection cycle like we talked about last time. It can be simple notes on my iPhone. It could be a few little post-it notes stuck on my board. And that's all it might be. And then I'm going to take a break and I'm going to have lunch. And currently my afternoon sessions are with my 6-year-old daughter. And then I have some family time and then some dinner. And then I just have some whatever I want to do. And you guys need to find your model. This is my current working model. It works for me. It might not work for you. But then I finish it off at the end of the day by making sure that my reflection is positive in terms of what I've done, not what I can't do, what I haven't done, but also savoring some of the activities as well. So I'm savoring some of the positive stuff that I've done, which I know that's going to help my momentum in order to build my motivation for the next day. Ellie, next slide, please. Fab. And I wanted to share just something new for you guys, because we do talk about this new thing all the time. And maybe you've seen smarter goals before. Maybe you have seen this. Maybe you haven't seen this. But this is a really good way of setting some new opportunity goals for you. So if you have used smarter before and we're in a situation where it's not working for you right now, then let's just try this. And the book from Gabrielle Ottingen is called Rethinking Positive Thinking. I would certainly use that as a recommendation for you guys to read. It's insightful. It has a little bit of neuroscience and mindfulness in there, but it just starts to reframe our thought process. So she's come up with a 4 simple little plan that is called WHOOP. And I'm not going to do the WHOOP, there it is, because there's no feedback and you guys might not find that funny. But if you think about it, it's simple in terms of it's easy to follow. We can use it on small goals. We can use it on big goals. And the first one is a wish. So what is my wish? Well, my wish might be to use iMovie a little bit better when I come out of isolation than when I came in. My wish might be that I need to get through 25 days of 25 press-ups for raising awareness for mental health. That might be my wish. Well, I'm going to visualize the outcome. And we have to do it in this order. We can't do the obstacle before the outcome because all of the research says it doesn't work. In order to optimize your opportunity goals, in order to be successful in this, we need to put the outcome first. So I'm going to visualize what that goal will look like. So what will it look like at the end of 25 days after I've done 25 press-ups? What will it look like when I can use iMovie in a smooth manner that allows me to produce better videos? So I'm going to visualize that process. But then I need to have a look at what are the obstacles in the way. Well, my obstacles are I'm a little bit old. I don't really like iMovie. It's a bit clumsy. I can't necessarily do it. Or actually 25 press-ups having 2 shoulder operations is probably not going to be good. So I'm going to stick those obstacles out there because once I know and I'm honest with my obstacles, then actually I can get past them. because there's actually some easy measures to get past them. And that's where my plan comes in. So I think in slide 2 or 3 today, I said, you know what it is? You just have to do it a little bit. Maybe Nike had something with that whole just do it slogan, but we need to plan to just go and do it. So try this out, pick a little goal, go through your wish, your outcome, your obstacle, and your plan. Visualize the outcome so that you can see it, highlight the obstacles that might come in, put a plan in place, and then hopefully by the next time we chat in the next couple of weeks, then maybe you've actually been successful in 1 or 2 of your goals. Thanks, Ellie.
Thanks, Graeme. If anyone's got any questions now, if they do want to pop them in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic, by all means, you can ask Graeme directly.
Yeah, I've got a question, Graeme.
Go ahead, Hannah.
So it's easy enough to sort of manage this when you're at university and you're in a sort of regulated routine, but what's the best way to stick to these sort of practices when we're at home, when we're out of routine and it's a different environment?
It is, absolutely. And I think you used the key word there, is routine. And the little model which I showed you, which is my current working model, that is my new routine. And I think you have to build those new routines for yourself. So if you've got brothers and sisters at home, or moms and dads who may be working as well, or in my case, a small 6-year-old child running around a little bit, it's not the same as working from home. And I work from home quite regularly for the last 10, 11 years prior to being in COVID-19. But this is a slightly different working from home because I do have a wife and small child hanging around. So it's not the same. So trying to get yourself into some kind of routine. Now, it doesn't have to be prescriptive. So, you know, when you're at universities, you've got lectures, you've got S&C sessions, and you've got your pitch sessions or your court sessions. That's all regulated for you. It doesn't have to be that prescriptive, but you need to find some kind of working routine that works for you. Now, that's a little bit trial and error. So if you listen to what Tess had said there, she said she's trying yoga in the morning. Now, that might work for her. It might not work for her. Yoga might be better for her midday, or might be better for her late at night. So you have to understand yourself a little bit. You have to know your own personality. You have to know your own surroundings and your own environment. And then you have to kind of come up with some formal model that's just going to help you get through the day as manageable as possible, but as successful as possible as well. If you just start flicking around from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday without having any kind of structure, you're just going to get lost a little bit. And then what happens is that your momentum starts to be a little bit lower, which that drives your motivation levels down a little bit as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I think there's also a question from Clarissa in the chat, which says, what do you mean by attaching a trigger?
Okay, on the last session, what we did is we looked at triggers and we looked at building habits. So, for example, one of my triggers is the fact that, and I know I don't do it very well, is I don't drink enough water during the day. So I'll get caught up. I'll certainly drink enough coffee during the day, but I certainly don't drink enough water during the day. So one of the things which I do is my little trigger, because I'm a visual learner, is before I go to bed on a nighttime, I put my water bottle right next to the sink. In fact, I've actually got it right now, right next to my computer as well. So what I do is I get my water bottle, I put it next to the sink. So when I go to make my first cup of tea or coffee in the morning, my trigger is, oh, there's my water bottle. So then I fill it up and I'll take it with me to my first event of today. So that's my trigger. So it's about finding out the right triggers to build the habits that are going to help you be successful with your goals. Hopefully that helps, Clarissa. If not, send me another little message.
That's good. I understand now.
Cool.
That's great, Graeme. If there is nothing else, if we hand over to Luke. You there, Luke?
Afternoon, everyone. Hi, this is Luke here, S&C coach. I also have my colleague Tom O'Neill waiting in the wings, which is probably just as well because my internet connection is terrible today. So if you lose me, Tom's going to jump straight in, I hope. Also, if there's any really tricky questions that come up later on, I will hand immediately to Tom, and he can handle the difficult questions. Okay, can we pop to the first slide there, please, Ellie? Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that want to hold my hands up and say that I personally am terrible at goal setting. It just doesn't get me going at all. I'm very, very process orientated, so I'm very happy to just bimble along, enjoying every session, taking it as it comes. I don't get that excited by kind of measurable, objective data. I don't get that excited about attaching numbers and kind of timescales to things, but that kind of stuff is very, very important to very competitive people and to athletes. So for the athletes that we work with, we of course encourage them to use these principles. Whether or not you think they're all applicable right now is another question. I draw your attention immediately to the last one of those SMART principles there. The idea that your goals should be timely and should have a time frame on them. That obviously is difficult right now because we have no idea what the time frame is. We don't know when we're going to compete again. We don't know when we're going to train in the normal way again. So I think for the time being, we can be excused for maybe choosing which of these principles is most important to us, which of them is going to keep us on track, which is going to keep us motivated and making progress, because ultimately that's all that really matters. I want to give an example of one of these other principles before we move on. So the idea that something should be attainable probably is very relevant now. It's easy for us to set ourselves very kind of lofty goals. I was convinced I was going to teach myself 2 or 3 new languages during lockdown. That obviously hasn't happened because I never broke it down into chunks. So if you have for your physical training, if you have a hefty goal, like if you want to be able to run a marathon distance, it's obviously worth breaking that down into bite-sized chunks and setting yourself some milestones along the way just to help you to keep motivated and to stay on track. So, for example, you might want to try and get to a point where you can do 6.5 miles every day, consecutive days for 4 days, and doing your marathon distance that way, broken up over those 4 days. Likewise, you do it 8.5 miles every day for 3 days and 13 miles for 2 consecutive days, and so on and so on. So just breaking things down into chunks to make them slightly more attainable for yourself. Anyway, all of that aside, for the time being, I'm going to recommend that we all hang our hats on one principle in particular, a new one, which is just clarity. So just having some clarity and some purpose. So even if your goals aren't very specific right now, they might be very, very general, but just try and have some clarity about what it is you're actually trying to achieve. So you can train with purpose and you can just practice something every day, like Graeme has said. Just take tiny little day-by-day short-term goals and just stack them on top of one another in order to achieve some bigger goals. So you can stack those up and really make some progress. Could we have the next slide, please, Ellie? So just to dig a little bit deeper into this idea of clarity, I'm gonna suggest that one of the main reasons people often don't achieve their goals is that they just try and do too many things all at once. So you just try and do everything all at once, and the end result, obviously, is you just don't have the time or the resources, the energy, to achieve any of those things very well, and ultimately just kind of give up. So really nice quote there from Dan John, who's an incredibly influential strength and conditioning coach in America. And he says that he will often get asked questions about one specific goal, like building muscle mass. So he'll make his recommendations around squatting lots, eating lots of food, taking lots of rest between workouts. And then from the very same person, he'll get a follow-up question asking, well, what about how do I maintain my six-pack abs? How do I improve my speed, agility? And how do I go about dunking a basketball? And obviously, if you're trying to achieve all of those things all at the same time, the likelihood is you'll achieve none of them. So I'm going to suggest that we just have clarity and just do 1, possibly 2 goals at any one time, and try and make those. If you're going to do 2 goals, try and make them related to one another and complementary to one another. Next slide, please, Ellie. Just to try and explain that a bit better, just put together a few examples which I'll just rattle through quickly. So if you're really clear on the fact that you would like to be faster at sprinting, then obviously there is the there's going to be some time spent actually practicing that skill itself. So going out and practicing some sprinting, but there are layers to that. So you'll need to practice different distances, different starting positions. You might want to introduce some constraints to help reinforce the mechanics that you use. You might want to sprint up a hill. You might want to drag a weight behind you, drag some sort of sled. I know Dan has a fancy parachute that he sprints with. You're also going to need to work on some additional tools. So you need to work on your jumping and landing and bounding, which is all about reactive strength and ankle stiffness and plyometric ability. So whilst we've got one goal of sprinting faster, there's definitely going to be two very different sessions there. There's also a third session that you'll need to consider, and that is just building some of the hardware, like building some tissue and the working parts that are going to help you to sprint faster. So you're going to need to do the hamstring, glute, and calf conditioning circuits that are in the home training program. So you're going to be doing some resistance training as well. And then alongside all that, you're going to want to develop some bits. You're going to want to learn to warm up really effectively, and you're going to want to take loads of rest in between attempts so you can do quality reps. So just an example there, you can have one goal, but you still get to enjoy lots of different types of sessions all at the same time towards that goal. Ellie, I'm going to ask you to skip to the next slide, please, if you can still hear me. I know my internet's playing up. 3. So very quickly, a second example, if your plan during this time, if your goal is to try and be a leaner athlete, to try and affect your body composition, again, there's going to be multiple things that you're going to need to try and do in order to achieve that. And they all complement one another. That's the point, is they all complement one another. So when you're doing some cardio, I'm going to encourage you to choose your most inefficient form of the cardio that you are worst at. That's going to be your best tool for burning fat. So if you're terrible at doing circuit training, do some terrible at interval training, do some intervals. And if you're one of these folks who can go out and just cycle all day long, hundreds of miles, I would say take some time away from that and try something else. When the swimming pools reopen, get yourself in the swimming pool, and it'll be terrible, but it'll be great fat burning. You're going to need to do some resistance training again, lots of repetitions, build some lean muscle mass. You're going to need to stay generally very, very active. So use your recovery days to stay active. And so on and so on. So like I said, there's lots of layers to it. Next slide, please, Ali. Okay, so the final bit from me then is just to say, whilst I am encouraging you to work on one, possibly two goals at any one time, the idea, of course, is that you can make some progress on one goal and then move on to something else, and then you'll find that you are stacking these goals one on top of the other, and they will overlap if you do them in a sensible order. So here's a couple of different models that I hope are useful to help you to think about what order you might want to try and tackle different goals. Okay, so you can work your way up these models, and then remember you can then cycle right back down to the beginning again and start again, and you'll just be getting better and better and better every time you work your way through. So on the left hand side of the screen, that's a basic model for your fitness training. So if you're going out and you're running, that's the order you might want to address this in. So just kind of building up some general conditioning with some long steady state type running, get better at that for 3 to 6 weeks maybe, and then move on, try something different, try some tempo running, so running at different paces for different amounts of time, try some interval training next, and then finally go out and try some speed work at speeds that are relevant to your sport, and then go back down again. Second model there on the right hand side, that's just to do with all your resistance training. So it's a good idea to learn to move well and be stable in the types of movements you're going to want to use, so like your squatting, your lunging, your pushing and your pulling. Then you're going to want to move on to the next step, start trying to endure lots of repetitions, lots of sets, try and build some muscle mass, and then start introducing some load and speed, strong and powerful. Those are ways that you can order your goals in order to keep on moving forward. I hope that's helpful. I'll pass on to the final slide, and I guess Rich is going to open it up to questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Luke. Has anybody got anything they would like to ask Luke directly? You can use the chat, or you can jump on the screen. No problem. Tom, do you want to make a start? If anyone picks any questions that might be relevant to both Luke and Tom, we can possibly ask at the end of Tom's section.
So Richard, I've just rattled through everything there, leaving Tom
sorry.
off the hook. So we will be ready. We'll be ready to move on to Dan. And if any questions come in later, Tom can tackle them for me.
No problem. I'll take them on.
All right, awesome stuff then. Yeah, the animation is sort of working cool. Yeah, I'm off mute. That's good. So yeah, in terms of nutrition and goal setting, there are a few things that are very similar to what's been said so far, especially in terms of Graeme's WHOOP concept, and definitely in terms of what Lucas said going through, and I will go into that in quite a bit of detail. There will be a bit of animations from Cool Runnings here, because this is mostly going to feature bobsleigh examples, but I will explain that as we go through. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Ellie. Cool. So yeah, the key thing, so the one before that, that's it. Yeah, the key thing with nutrition goals is, and that most people will be familiar with, is the things around apps. So I'm guessing most people will have used MyFitnessPal at some point, or if you have worked with me and we've been recording data, Nutrition IX is also quite a good one. But to be honest, there are a lot of common pitfalls with them. I mean, you get the lowest levels of sort of nutritional help for people, so the sort of thing that most people in the sort of general public will be familiar with. So things like Weight Watchers or self-classified nutrition specialists who haven't got a master's may come in with sort of point systems or particular gimmicks and things that might look good to the average person, but in terms of an athlete and in terms of the actual science that goes behind all of this, they basically make it far too complicated, so people don't actually realize that they're paying for basically very simple information. Things like apps as well, they can be very useful. So something like MyFitnessPal or Nutrition IX, I use them as an athlete and as a practitioner, just in terms of database and the way it works with athletes. However, I will say that the goals that they set in those apps aren't particularly accurate, and they tend to be a bit too complicated. So I'll use an example of MyFitnessPal. They use a personal activity level along with a BMR calculation to figure out how active someone is and therefore their calorie goal for the day. They don't take into any account of body composition or actual athletic level, or even actually the any recorded distances during the day. So that it's a big consideration. Recently, when I've been working with some athletes, I've actually done a comparison between an app and what I've worked off personally from my own records and body composition measures I've taken, and there's in some cases like a 300 calorie difference, which might not seem like a lot in terms of ball-bond biscuits, but in terms of how that affects the actual athlete, that can be massive. The things I would use with apps is really good in terms of just keeping a record. It's not the most accurate in the world. I mean, if anyone knows anything about nutrition research, there's the energy intake is and energy output are some of the hardest things to measure accurately. But in terms of just this sort of situation, an app will do you quite well. And in terms of that energy expenditure versus energy output, those are the two things I would use. I wouldn't use anything else from that. And if you give it one more click, it should come up with a graph. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a snapshot of my dietary intakes, and I have a very simple goal, which I'll go through in a second, but this is how simple I keep it. It might not look simple, but in terms of nutrition, this is. All that is my energy intake, my energy expenditure, and then how much of a deficit or surplus that is. And as you can see, mine's all over the place, but I have programmed it that way for different things, and then obviously going off an average energy balance. And at its very basic, its most basic form, I keep that to a traffic light system. So I know by looking at that at a glance what days are red, what days are yellow, and what days are green in terms of my goals. So if you give it another click, get to possibly my favourite part of cool runnings. But yeah, if we give it another click, it kind of shows a little bit of the process that I would go through with an athlete. And to be fair, sometimes the athlete won't even realise this because I'll just work it into the program. But this is an example of the process I go through when helping an athlete set goals. And I've used my own goals as an example because I can talk about them quite in depth without any issue. So for those of you who don't know, a bit of background, my main athletic sort of goal is going into skeleton bobsleigh trials for Team GB. Now, I've been in and out of it for a few years, and this is sort of my last chance opportunity. So I'm using this lockdown to sort of get myself in the right shape so I can perform on the day. So it starts off with a bit like with the Whoop principle, so with that wish of what I want to do, what is my ultimate goal in terms of this process, then figuring out from a physical perspective what I want my body to do, what does it actually need to do. So that's where sort of the measurements can come in. So I know I need to run a 30 metre in under 3.9 seconds, bearing in mind my previous PB, I think from last year was 4.01 in trainers, so I don't think I'm doing too bad. Counter movement jumps again, like 60 centimeters, standing long jump, 290, hopefully 3 meters, and most importantly, a fast push and resilience. Now, looking at those factors, I need to know what actually needs to change from my physical state currently. So I know I need to be more powerful, I need to accelerate more, I need to have a higher top speed, I need to increase my pushing power, and a big part of that's momentum. So I can be really fast, but if I'm only 74 kilos, I'm not going to have as much pushing power if I was 80 kilos and working on that sort of workload capacity. So what do I need to do to get there is I need to increase my lean body mass. So I need to be bigger, stronger, faster, which is pretty much a main principle in terms of skeleton and bobsleigh. It's the main thing you want, is get big and get fast. I need to be able to recover quickly, and I need to have pretty efficient body composition because I don't want to be pushing around excess weight that I'm not going to use, because then that will affect my sprint speed. So how do I do that? So in terms of the training side of things, that comes down to what Luke was talking about the sprinting. So the sprinting goals that Luke was going on about, that is pretty much straight. I have written pretty much the same things down in my training book. And like you were saying with the parachute, I am a big fan of that. Then in terms of the nutrition side of things, what's going to complement that? So for me, it's going to be a positive energy balance, and that might not be every day. So as you might have seen in that spreadsheet, some of my days were in minuses, and some of them were actually quite large minuses because I was training a lot. But the idea is if I can keep myself into an average energy balance of positive 270 to 300 calories, I will put on weight. I need a high protein intake. Feel the demand for the training. So on my training days, I try not to eat as much because I'm not feeling for those days. Or if I know I've got a big training session, the next day I feel the night before. Getting plenty of fruit, veg, and hydration in there. So looking at all of the different factors in terms of nutrition is what I can actually do to get to where I want to be. So in terms of just going through that process, and that also leads into developing an action plan. Then finally, I might, as with like performance, nutrition is sometimes beneficial. Now, I wouldn't say it's like, I think a lot of the time people tend to go to nutrition as the first step when really it should be the last if you ever use it. Now, for myself, and then this is very much a case study on what I would need for performance, not necessarily what another athlete would need. But for myself, I know that whey protein is a practicality that helps me. Sorry, my phone has decided to come to life. Yeah, so I know whey protein, for example, helps me in terms of getting a protein hit in late on in the day when I've done my training, because I don't like to eat much on a night, but I still need that protein intake. So I'm just going to turn this off for some reason. There we go. Creatine helps with that spring capacity, and I can talk a little bit more about that. And then beta-alanine for buffering capacity. And one thing I do use also is collagen for joint health, and that's partly down to the need to recover. The training loads I have to go through are quite large, and it will be further down the trials as well. Because part of that you spend about a month down in the Olympic Training Centre in Bath, and they pretty much hammer you for a month. So having joints that can actually take that strain really, really helps. So if we can go on to the next slide. If there's anything else. Yeah, so putting that into practice, obviously we'll go through this more in terms of an action plan in the next session, but for me it's just setting very, very simple goals, like I was saying before. With the apps being a bit complicated, for me it's just a thing of, I know I need to increase my body mass from about 74.5, which was what it was last year, to 80 kilos, which is what I want to be at the end of the year, when hopefully the restrictions have hopefully been lifted. Now, I need to do that through a daily monitor. So that's a daily goal for me. I need to work off my energy balance, so I need to monitor that. So that's another goal for me. And I know as well that I might, from my own biology, I know that I'm not going to be able to do a really lean sort of bulk, as it were, during this state, because I'm not walking around as much. And it's taking that reality there and saying, well, I understand I might not be as lean as I need to be at the end of this first stage, but then once restrictions are lifted, I can reduce that body fat because I will have more capacity to do so. So it's been, like Luke said before, quite realistic in these sort of situations. So what I've seen with some athletes in the past, and what is quite common when you look at the research, is some people will just set a really high goal, a little bit what I've done with my ultimate outcome goal, but then think they have to get to it straight away. And as an athlete and as a practitioner in some ways, I have been guilty of that in the past. I think everyone has. But in a situation like this, where you are quite limited in the sort of things you can do, it is good to just say, when you're setting your goals, it's keeping it quite realistic and keeping it so it's small goals every stage of the way. And I think one more slide. Yeah, and that comes just down to small differences. So in terms of even on the smaller level, looking at every individual meal, I will look at, I need a goal of protein, I need some carbs, I need veg. And obviously those amounts do differ depending on what meal that is. Like Graeme was saying, hydration is a big thing. I am notorious for being underhydrated. Like I've been on training camps in Scotland and I've been doing really well, beating everyone on the camp, and then basically having to go home and go back to the start in the bus because my leg cramped up because I wasn't drinking enough that day. Those sort of things are really important. And if you can identify that sort of thing early on and put it into that sort of daily goal, really helps. And like I said, again, with protein intake and adjusting that energy demand, but it also means just recognizing the physical stuff as well. Obviously it's a little bit more into the S&C, but for me it's been mobility every day, working my accessories and keeping up that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So making sure I walk about as much as I can on those days where I know I need to burn off more calories, or those days where I know I need to get more of a strength stimulus in. Obviously this has all been very much a case study on sort of me, but I thought it would be the best way to sort of demonstrate how that process works in terms of goal setting with nutrition. So starting off from a physical outcome that you want, and then thinking, okay, what can I do with food, and what can I do with food to support my body to meet that goal, and then working goals off that. So basically, there's lots and lots of little goals, which sort of work off a tree, and then they all just lead into one another. I think that explains it particularly well, but I'm completely open to questions now if anything needs clarifying or if anyone wants to put anything forward questions-wise.
Thanks, Dan. That's brilliant. If anyone's got any questions, by all means use the chat. By all means, you can do it. Just unmute your mic.
I was going to ask a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
It was just that obviously we spoke about earlier about it was really hard to set the time frame. And you talked about sort of increasing your body mass and I guess you're quite sort of numbers based. Do you then have to take into account a time frame when you're planning sort of when you're putting like forward your goals in terms of like planning sort of how many weeks you're going to be in like sort of calorie either deficit or sort of increasing your calories for that week? How does it work for you in terms of time frame?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, outside of COVID, there's quite a tradition of putting it towards like sort of you will gain X amount this week. I mean, the very old sort of rule of thumb is around about if you have a surplus or a deficit of 500 calories a day, you will gain or lose 1 pound of mass, whether that is muscle mass or fat, a week. Now, again, that's come off arbitrary data from research. I think it started in the 1980s. So, and again, like I said, none of this stuff is massively accurate. And that's kind of what a lot of the sort of MyFitnessPals and things like that are sort of based off. So if you complete a dietary log in MyFitnessPal, it will say in 5 weeks, if every day was like this, you will be this weight. Now, yeah, traditionally that is the case. So if you were doing a strict weight cut for a fight, for example, or for if you were a lightweight rower and you were going into sort of a regatta and you needed to make a certain weight, that is something that has to be taken into account. So sometimes you might only have 4 weeks to sort of cut down that weight. So it can be a thing of getting to that point and thinking, right, I need to take out, say, so many calories each day for this amount of time, and then obviously monitoring that as you go. So if you don't lose that weight in that time, you've got to think, well, I've got to increase that calorie deficit. However, in this sort of situation, a bit like lightweight rowers normal season, so when they don't have like a weight to make or something like that, it's pretty much keeping their body around about that level so they can do a cut down if they need to. So it doesn't have to be, so pretty much putting yourself into a prime position to get to that weight so that in a shorter period of time you can drop down. And again, in this sort of situation, it does sort of shift a little bit. So for me personally, I don't really work that well off doing it off a time base, and that's just me, and I think that's just kind of the situation, is I work off every single day, and I don't do very regular weigh-ins. That's because my skills have decided to break, but yeah, I don't often measure it. When I do, I log it in, and then that's that. It's hitting that daily goal, and I think that's a much easier way of just keeping motivated at this sort of time. If you have got that bigger goal, and especially when things as now, we don't actually have that end time frame. So if I was getting to the point where I knew I had trials in a particular month, yeah, I probably would do. I'd probably work out how many calories I would need to make a certain weight from that. But outside of that, I'd pretty much just keep it as a daily thing. Does that answer your question? I know I kind of just circled around a little bit there.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you.
All right, no worries. Yeah, any other questions? More than happy.
Thanks, Dan. There doesn't seem to be much other questions coming in. So I'm just going to hand over to Hannah, if you're there, Hannah.
Yeah, I'm here. So yeah, as we finished the past few weeks, I've done a little bit of a President's Challenge again. So I'm just going to share this week's video and then we'll just round up. So. In keeping with Graeme's theme last week on reflection, I've been reflecting on some areas of my sport which I find hardest. And one of those is flexibility. So this week's challenge uses a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of balance. Please do post your attempts onto the Team Durham Talks Facebook page. We'd love to see what you can come up with. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of something that I've sort of been working on with my balance and flexibility. I'd love to see your videos this week. If you can just post them on the Team Durham Talks Facebook page, and we'll be trying to get other teams to do it across the week. So as mentioned earlier, the next talk is going to be on June the 10th. So in 2 weeks' time, and it's on taking action. So exams and things are coming to a close. It's a good time as we sort of look ahead to an even longer summer break. So yeah, think about how we can use that time wisely and take action. So again, thanks for listening today. And yeah, that's it for this week. Bye.